Hello, welcome to this special edition, or I guess special education for sustainability training session, and this new academic year. And thank you so much for taking the time this morning, or well, no, it's the afternoon now, isn't it, Meryl? Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Paul. I am a geography teacher and education lead for the Ministry of Eco Education.
And I'm Meryl, a science teacher and regional coordinator for the North. We are the Ministry of Eco Education, a mission-driven charity with a vision for green education system where sustainability is woven throughout the curriculum. We're helping all schools use the best free resources and opportunities from hundreds of organisations to incorporate the most up-to-date research from academics into your everyday practice.
So we have an hour of inspiring and interactive CPD for you today, and we're going to be joined by some special guests, and you're going to have lots of opportunities to ask questions. Now, feel free at any time to drop questions into the chat. And I've already seen some people have started saying hello. Well, we would like you to take a moment to add who you are, where you're from, and we would really like to know one thing that you are already doing in your school or your setting or in your role. So take a moment just now to type in the chat, say hello, and give just an example of something that you're doing in your setting. I see someone's
I love
yeah.
that Dens has already identified that it was a blackbird singing. Well done. Hello, Hayley. Hello, Dens. Hello, Jane.
We the music there, I mean, there's loads of examples of field recordings. We really like using that in an online setting because it can feel really kind of virtual and disconnected. And it's always good to start with the sounds of nature. It's even better if you can take a moment to go and wander outside and enjoy that in person. But if you have to do something online, maybe you can start with a bit of music or sounds of
As a
nature. Meryl, yeah.
as a teacher, you might have already been embedding sustainability for years, or you might be relatively new to this. Wherever you are on your journey, we think we've got something for you today. It's really good to see some eco schools people, some forest schools people, some science teachers. And Anne, they adopted a common earth pledge. I love that. You know, the whole school can say we pledge to protect our earth. Hello, Elle. Good to see you. So Elle is on this chat, and she's the climate ambassador hub lead for the Newcastle Northeast region. Lots of education coordinators for climate. Hello, Hayley. Hello, Rachel. And Jane, English teacher and eco lead. I know you'll be exceptionally busy, especially at the start of the school term. So how lovely. We've got lots of people here, Paul, who looking for a little bit of assistance and support, new ideas. And I think we've got something for everybody.
Yeah, so we're going to start with what we can do to take action, or sorry, why. We're going to start with why. And we live on a rapidly changing planet. The climate you grew up in doesn't exist anymore. And over the last 15 months, global temperatures have actually exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that's the temperature that scientists think that we need to stay below to minimize harm. Now, we know human activity releases greenhouse gases, which traps heat and warms the planet. And our planet is warming faster than ever in geological history. Our actions now have an impact over future decades. And it's actually a child starting reception this year. And let me show you this. A child starting reception this year is likely to see between 2 and 4 degrees Celsius of heating during their lifetime. Now, we've already started seeing the impacts of heating around the world with things like increased wildfires, droughts, and extreme weather events. And the world is this interconnected place where we, wherever you might be, are feeling the impacts of that now.
It's not just carbon and changes to climate and weather, Paul, is it? Humans are also having a dramatic impact on biodiversity across the world. These biodiversity stripes show the world going from vibrant green to grey, the colour draining from the world with a 69% decline in global biodiversity since 1970. That's my lifetime, which is, shocking. But for young people, that shifting baseline syndrome means that they're just around now. They don't remember plagues of ladybirds and things that I remember from the 70s. Each year, the UN completes the largest global opinion poll on climate change. Most people want action to address climate change. In the UK, 84% of people want stronger action, and 71% of people think schools should teach more about climate change. Paul, slides.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting distracted there, Meryl. Yeah, I hope people have seen this report. It's a really, really good
It's
one.
a really good report to read.
Yeah, 84% of people want more climate action, and 71% think schools should teach more about it.
And you can look at the UK, or you can look at any other nation worldwide. It's a fantastic geography resource or maths resource, even in itself. And research from Teach the Future found 68% young people want to learn more about the environment. And the world is changing. Even young people can see that. So most people support more action, and we can all act in our spheres of influence. The Climate Action Circles is a great way to think about this, from Dr. Johnston of the All We Can Save project. In order to work out what we should do, we need to think about what needs to be done, what we're good at, and what brings us joy. As educators, we're all well placed to communicate with audiences and lead action in schools as catalysts in the community. So climate action is part of education.
So what can we do then? What can we do? So schools can be broken down into a number of different areas. And you've probably all seen this before. The idea that schools can be broken down into their culture, their campus, or the school sites and the buildings, the curriculum, and then also the wider community that schools are connected with. And at the Ministry of Eco-Education, we believe that the curriculum is fundamental to the functioning of a school. And it's the kind of the hub of all of those C's. And we think that they can be woven through and linked into the curriculum, providing really rich learning opportunities for young people. And numerous reviews of the curriculum then by people like the House of Lords and learned organisations such as the British Association of Science have identified that the existing curriculum is outdated, no surprise there, and that climate and sustainability are just not covered in enough detail, or it's kind of left to maybe a small handful of teachers in certain subjects. And of course, we know that the Department for Education is about to start a curriculum review, but this, alongside actually rolling out any of the changes, takes time, years, decades even. Now, our work with schools shows it is possible to affect change from the bottom up. Teachers have agency, and we can do much more within the current curriculum and system. And over the last few years, we've definitely proven that's possible.
So what is curriculum making? Now, to help Paul and I on this discussion, we've actually made lots of recordings with some experts, and we're going to hear from Professor Lizzie Rushton from the University of Stirling about curriculum making. So away we go, Paul.
When I'm thinking and talking about curriculum and curriculum making, I draw on the work of Mark Priestley and colleagues who understand curriculum as a social practice, which is made by teachers working with other actors and groups, including young people. Curriculum making happens in different sites, of course in the classroom, but also beyond the classroom and interactions with wider society. Curriculum making includes different practices, including content selection, so what's included and what's not. It also includes how content is taught and assessed. Teachers have key roles in how curriculum is negotiated, interpreted, mediated. They are curriculum makers, so curriculum is really complex. Of course, we have curriculum documents, for example, the national curriculum, which sets out what should be taught, so what knowledge, skills, capabilities young people should develop through education. These documents themselves are already produced through interpretation. There are choices made about what's included and what's not, but the curriculum which is taught in schools goes beyond this document. So school leaders and teachers interpret how the national curriculum should be enacted in their local communities. Curriculum making is a series of practices and occurs across different sites with different groups. It's a layered practice. So when exploring curriculum making, scholars have considered the different levels or layers or domains or sites where curriculum making occurs and how these interact with one another. So at one end of the scale, we have the supra level with international frameworks, for example. The macro could be focused at the national level with ideas of attainment levels or exams or curriculum. And then at the meso level, we've got schools or groups of schools or other bodies. And then at the micro level, we've got the classroom and the nano, the individual learner, perhaps with a personal plan for learning. So these different levels interact with each other in complex and often unexpected ways. And the teacher, the students are involved in negotiating the different demands and the expectations of these different levels. I think the Ministry of Eco-Education provides a really important meso level, meso layer, so that idea of the other bodies there, where teachers can draw on different resources, they can think about different ideas, and it's a bit of a different space for professional learning to explore how they could enact sustainability education that's appropriate for their schools and their classrooms. So for me, this emphasis on professional learning through this kind of meso layer is important because it's foregrounding the expertise and the active role teachers have as curriculum makers, rather than positioning them as passive actors who implement or deliver a set of resources, and so they therefore need training as opposed to education.
And wouldn't that be amazing if all teachers received training in how to deal with climate and sustainability? I'm sure it'll happen in the future. And that's actually part of a longer interview, along with all videos we show you today that are available on our playlist on our YouTube channel. I think there's an hour link in the chat. So we should think about curriculum not as a fixed document, but something that constantly evolves. We must consider the national curriculum, but we know it's outdated. So there's so much more opportunity to interpret and enact the curriculum through an environmental lens than we might think.
So we at the Ministry of Eco-Education, we think that education for sustainability should be thought of in its broadest sense, not just climate education. That's one aspect of a much broader system. And we actually use 7 key themes, and I'm going to show you them through our website. So I'm just in the platform now, and then you can see here these 7 key themes. And we use those to break down the idea of sustainability. And we think it's a really useful way to actually create something quite tangible rather than just this sort of ethereal word sustainability. And actually, there's a priority to these 7 key themes, with transport, energy, and food making up about 80% of our impact on the planet. Now, under each of these themes, and I'll just click on, let's go to transport. What we have is a whole series of inquiry questions that sort of lead learning journeys. And each of these questions frames a series of 8 lessons. And then those lessons weave together the resources, or the best free resources and opportunities from hundreds of organisations. So what we're hoping to do is to save teachers time and energy by helping present to them the very best of what's out there, kind of organised in a really sensible framework that then links through into their curriculum.
So Paul, go back to the different themes and click on energy for me, because you talked about energy, and I want to tell people about my favourite Ministry of Eco-Education big question. So my favourite is, what does it take to make a cup of tea? Now, if you ask a group of young children, in primary age, what does it take to make a cup of tea? They'll come up with a kettle, a tea bag, and water, and maybe some milk and maybe some sugar. But that's such a small view on something that's so complicated. So when we open up one of the big questions on the Ministry of Eco-Education website, there's a series of 8 weeks or 8 sessions to do. It makes links to the national curriculum. There's a key text, in this case, how the Queen found the perfect cup of tea. And it links now out to the Sustainable Development Goals, so that we understand that this is part of a bigger picture of sustainability education. But then we've got, the individual lessons or sessions that you can do. How important is a cup of tea? Well, it's integral to our national sense of being. A lot of people are very much aware that tea is, very British, but it's not. So we've got the history of tea. But where does tea come from? This brings aspects of global learning, because we import tea from many places around the world, far-flung places, India and China. And so we can talk about growing tea, and there's links out to activities that you can do from the RHS. We talk about how goods are transported through the series of lessons. This is a huge aspect of, our globalization. We have, loads and loads of different transport routes around the world that are causing all sorts of problems themselves in terms of climate impact. We talk about the people who grow the tea, who invented the tea. How do we actually make a cup of tea? So you can bring in history, science, English to this. And finally, we can talk about what different teas people drink. And the last one, lesson 8, is which tea do your teachers most prefer? So children can develop their own survey. They could do it online. They could do it on a worksheet. It's a downloadable worksheet there. And then they can look at the analysis of that. How many teachers like tea with sugar? How many teachers prefer different options like fruit teas? So there's a whole series of lessons based around one throwaway question: what does it take to make a cup of tea? Actually, when you unpick it, there's a huge learning journey. And that's just one of around about 70 different big questions designed in a similar way from early years to Key Stage 3 now, providing inspiration for teachers of any key stage. And we've made special series of videos called Education for Sustainability 101, which helps summarise the key ideas and organisations within each of those 7 themes that can help you bring in enrichment into those different questions. And there's a link in the chat to those. And we're going to now hear some from teachers how they're incorporating sustainability into their practice. We're going to start with Sarah Dukes from the Chase Academy. So Paul, over to you.
Sarah Dukes. I'm English teacher, also teach a bit of art, and I'm sustainability coordinator at the Chase School in Malvern.
And Sarah, you were just going to give us some top tips, kind of, if you could tell teachers anything in terms of education for sustainability, what would it be?
I would say that until we get very explicit climate focus on our national curriculum, we can use the flexibility of the national curriculum and just embrace how we can change our content. So when we are teaching our skills, we can make sure that we tweak our content so that it is very climate friendly. We want to use anything that's going to encourage deepening our connection with nature. We want to really focus on the climate and ecological crisis, and we want to teach ideas around sustainability. And to do that, we can teach the same skills, but thinking very carefully about the content that we are choosing. So, for example, when we're teaching the skills of persuasion, we can choose a Greta Thunberg speech. She's an absolute gift for English teachers. She embraces all of those elements that we would teach. She is repetitive. She will build extended metaphors, house on fire. She will use emotive language. And her first speeches, that she was the same age as the pupils that we'll be teaching, so instantly engaging. When we are teaching our class reader, we can think very carefully about choosing a novel that's going to deepen people's connections with nature and raise an understanding of the climate emergency. And a brilliant one that we use at the Chase for Year 8 is The Survival Game by Nikki Singer, that we have a whole scheme of work on. And not only it's set in the not too distant future, follows the experiences of Maori, who's a climate migrant. So it deals with the 2 biggest issues of our time, the climate crisis and migration.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah. There's one thing you talked about earlier as well, tracked changes documents. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about those.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can use the flexibility of the national curriculum, but even better if we had the explicit references within the national curriculum to make it compulsory to teach worldwide or UK-wide. And so the Teach the Future Track Changes report, they've done so much work on, they mimic what the national curriculum looks like, and they keep it the same, but they add very specific elements that bring to the fore nature connectedness, sustainability, and the climate and ecological crisis, and they show really specifically how we can weave that into our lessons. They do it for English, they've done it for lots of other subjects, and they're from Key Stage 2 all the way up to Key Stage 4. with the idea to expand. And I'm really hoping that our new government will be on board with that and start to work with the climate education bill to make that happen.
Thank you, Sarah. Last year we supported Sarah to organise an online English Teach Meet with focus on sustainability, and there's a video on our YouTube channel of lots of that discussion. She mentioned the Tracks Changes initiative by Teach the Future, and that link's now in the chat, so that it's also completed for primary and secondary. I would strongly recommend, if you're delivering the national curriculum, that you look at that. And it shows how easy it is to embed sustainability even into the existing national curriculum. And we've drawn on this work to help inform our own curriculum at Ministry of Eco Education, so they're a great starting point, and would thoroughly recommend them. Now we're going to go to Dr. Catherine Walker from Newcastle University about how teachers can incorporate sustainability into their practice. Let's go, Catherine.
I'm a big fan of non-hierarchical learning, that actually we are all in this together, that, teachers obviously do have specialist subject knowledge that we are, sharing with students, and that's really, really important. When it comes to an issue like climate change, there's so many unknowns, there's so much uncertainty, and so we are in many ways sort of on a level playing field in terms of talking through the different responses to that. So I think that kind of trying to sort of level the playing field and just being quite honest. I think teachers being quite honest about, this is an issue that can feel quite overwhelming for adults too, even for, me as an educator. I think place-based learning, really starting where you are. Climate change can feel very abstract, but actually thinking through, well, what is our environment like here? I've been involved in projects in the past where students get involved in kind of mapping the area around their school and mapping hazards and thinking how those hazards could be mapping hazards and vulnerabilities and risks, and how all of those could be exacerbated if there were to be, a 1.5, a 1.8, 2 degree global temperature rise, etc. So those kinds of actually thinking it through from the local context, and doing that in an action research style way of actually like, let's find this out, rather than the teacher telling the students all this information, like, let's find this out together.
Thanks, Catherine. So she mentioned there this idea of place-based learning or inquiry and the importance of localizing the learning. And I think that's something that we're really conscious of in the Ministry of Eco Education, as well as the content, this kind of stuff that people are learning about. We're also really keen to explore the pedagogy and encourage teachers and educators to move into a space which is maybe more creative and pushing the boundaries in terms of the way that we might think of teaching. And actually, over the past year, we've worked with local authorities across the country to really localise the Ministry of Eco Education approach, recognising that the impacts of climate change and that the action that we will need to be different for children maybe who are living in a big city compared to maybe people in a rural location, or again, if you're in a coastal town or city, it will be vastly different to someone in kind of further inland. And we've just dropped a link in the chat, I think, to the regional support there. And you can see which local authorities we've kind of connected with. By the end of the academic year this year, we are definitely going to have bridging documents, this is what we call them, connecting kind of more localized learning across the whole of the UK. And in that as well, actually, I should signpost, we're really highlighting the local organisations, both the kind of wider environmental groups, but also the ones really focused on environmental education and education for sustainability on a really localised level, and really encouraging schools to connect with those for that support. Okay, so now we're going to have a clip from Professor Andrew Perez-Charlton, who led the development of the National Climate Education Action Plan and is also a really key player and kind of organiser in the Climate Ambassador scheme. Now, here is Andrew's video.
Oh, no, thanks for having me, Paul. Yeah, delighted to have a conversation. I mean, I think one part of the kind of the journey I've been on, in a way, is obviously I come from a from a physics and maths background, as I said, and you know, my initial thinking was very kind of narrow, really thinking about how do we get more climate education in physics, and I think that is really important. But I think through talking to lots of people, talking to you and talking to many other people, I really understand now that there's such an opportunity to put work discussion about climate and sustainability into whatever you teach, because this is just fundamental to our lives on the planet, right? So if you are you know, a kind of food science teacher thinking about the sustainability of our food system and how you bring, you know, that's something you can bring into your teaching. It doesn't have to focus everything around climate or sustainability, but just starting that conversation is so important, because that might be the hook that, you know, the young person who really loves your subject, that gives them the opportunity to open their eyes a little bit to how these changes are going to affect their future. So I would say, kind of, don't be afraid of it, embrace it. There's lots of great advice out there already, and more coming, that will help you think about, how can I do something simple? And I know that, you know, teachers are so overworked, and they, you know, it's really difficult for them. But there's lots of great things you can do. Just a small change, a small bringing of these ideas, just change the project that you work on, can make a huge difference to how your young people, how your school start to address these areas. So I would just really encourage you to go for it with kind of gusto and enthusiasm. And there'll be plenty of help out there once you start looking.
So some great advice there from Andrew. I don't know if anyone, you know, if anything's chimed with you, or if anything you've heard, you thought, oh, that's sort of piqued your interest, please do throw it into the chat, sort of say, you know, or if even
there's something people want to share, that they think, I found something really useful.
Throw it in. So we've got one more now from another real expert in their field. We've got Professor Sylvia Knight from the Royal Meteorological Society. And she's got some advice on what to look out for in high quality teaching resources. And actually, we were really fortunate, weren't we, over the summer to actually perform on stage with Sylvia. Meryl, where were we?
WOMAD. I got a backstage pass to WOMAD. It was the most exciting thing I think I've ever had in my teaching career. But just to stand on stage and talk to people about, you know, the importance of climate education, and some of those, ask some of our big questions to the audience with Dale and with Sylvia Knight. Superb.
It is just about asking some basic questions if you're considering a new resource. Is it clear where any data or any images in the resource came from? And are those up to date? And probably most importantly, can you show your students why that information is relevant to them and why they should care about it, really? I've got a few favorite websites that I will tend to keep an eye on. So for anything kind of current and newsy, Carbon Brief are, you know, brilliant for investigating anything that's currently in the media. I think it's Simon Clark, is it, who produces some really, really good little short videos about climate change that are very, very high quality. So
yeah, Sylvia mentioned there Carbon Brief, which is definitely a great website to check out. And another good one is Our World in Data. And both of those are great places that we, you know, Meryl and I and the whole team regularly go and visit to kind of keep ourselves up to date and to better understand the science. And also, particularly Our World in Data is one that we've pulled a lot of great infographics and we're encouraging teachers to use those in their teaching.
Something else Sylvia did on stage is actually she tried to show a demonstration, you know, of how. So what she did, we had the globe, and she tried to show how the atmosphere was effectively absorbing. She does it in terms of light, but it was absorbing that heat energy. So trying to bring those practical, you know, we do it quite often with a globe and a jacket, but that wasn't quite scientific enough for Sylvia. But so it's you know, there's the WOMAD videos online now as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll just take a moment quick, Meryl. Just Les has got a really good question there that I think we're going to come back to with one of the future videos. So we will definitely address that. Les is just asking, you know, what about this potential for 4 degrees?
It's terrifying.
Like that,
it is terrifying, Les.
How on earth could we prepare children for that? And I know, you know, there's definitely a lot of work in that kind of space in terms of do we need to be preparing children for a world that is dramatically different rather than the sort of subtle, more nuanced?
We talk a little bit about climate anxiety in a while, because it is an issue that we can't ignore. So anyway, we're first of all, sorry, Les, we'll come back to you in a little while. We're going to hear from another teacher, Ed Moore. He's an award-winning educator who's just moved to the Green School in Bali, which is an incredibly famous school for being probably one of the greenest in the world, from a school in the UK, Dharma's first school. So off we go, Ed.
Hey, it started 12 years ago at the school that I'm already at. I'm here in my NQT year. It started, with the occasional environmental weeks, but now it's fully embedded within our school curriculum across all subjects. It goes down like a golden thread, and we use another inspirational guy, Richard Dunn. We use his Harmony project to implement inquiry questions within our half-termly planning. Yeah, so I'm the sustainability lead. I keep everybody up to date with what's going on with the DFE and the sustainability climate strategy. I plan the lessons. I support staff. I'm also a support to other schools within our academy mat, our Wessex mat, helping them to implement actions within their schools. But be able to sort of galvanise your school team to get behind it and inspire young children, to feel empowered to want to take it forwards.
So Ed mentioned there Richard Dunn and the Harmony Project, another source of inspiration for embedding sustainability across the curriculum. There's a link to the website in the chat. Thanks, Tom. There are a whole wealth of organisations helping to support schools that we'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment. But Ed's philosophy centres on the idea of young people as change makers, and everything he does enables and activates them to make a positive contribution to their community. Literally, they write letters and hound the local councillors, but it makes huge improvements. But sometimes maybe we can put a little bit too much pressure on young people. We're going to go back to Catherine Walker from the University of Newcastle with some ideas on this.
Really, in many ways, valuable, but potentially kind of quite burdensome phrase, agent of change, can be kind of put on young people in different ways. And I think on the one hand, it is an empowering idea to be told, yes, you're an agent of change. No one is too small to make a difference, to reprise Greta Thunberg's, the title of one of her books. So we do need to be giving that message that, it's not too late, and that everybody can contribute to how we build a more just response to climate change. On the other hand, young people can't feel that they are doing this alone. They need to feel supported. They need to feel that the adults in their worlds are taking action and obviously that looks different according to who the adult is. Even as adults, we have different access to, decision making, we have different resources, and we're all kind of positioned differently in how we can respond. So I think on the one hand, it's kind of being quite, as I was saying before, that kind of non-hierarchical, that we are in this together, and we need to find a way through together. But on the other, I think it is about adults stepping up where we need to. And I think it's really striking that the largest global study of climate anxiety to date that's been published, which was lead authored by Caroline Hickman at the University of Bath, and she heads up the Climate Psychology Alliance. In that report, the source of young people's anxiety is not just their concerns about climate change and the way that it is affecting the world, in terms of physical effects and atmospheric effects. Their anxiety is also coming from the fact that people in power know this and are not doing anything, not doing nearly enough about it. So it's that feeling of betrayal, of being let down, is actually contributing to their anxiety.
So the full interview with Catherine is on our YouTube channel, which also covers the important issue of climate justice, which we're not going to have time to look at today, but how responding to the climate and nature crisis is a way to address broader societal issues. Now, Catherine mentioned Caroline Hickman, a psychotherapist and researcher with the University of Bath. Caroline is the lead author on the Lancet Planetary Health Study, arguing that climate anxiety is a healthy response to the climate crisis. So this comes back to Les's question. Let's hear what Caroline has to say about climate education, and then I'll show you an image of some of her studies.
When we define climate anxiety, I think we have to be really clear that climate anxiety is only partly in relation to climate change. Of course, looking at what's happening with climate and biodiversity is going to make us stressed and anxious. It is not only a sign of mental health, but actually you only feel this because you care. If you don't care, you're not going to feel it. So actually, I would want to support and celebrate people feeling it. I would say, well, you feel this because you care. At this point, here's my reassurance to teachers. It's actually easier than you think, because you don't need to be completely knowledgeable at absolutely everything. You just need to be 2 steps ahead of the majority of the children. There will always be a few children there that know more than you do and know more than I do. And the way to approach that is say, here's what I know, let's find out about the rest together. Because actually what children want to hear is that you're interested, you're engaged, and you're sharing what knowledge you've got, and you don't have to have all the answers.
And it's so just me clipping in there. So we don't need to know everything. I think teachers can beat themselves up if you start to understand, how big these issues are. But we don't need to know everything, and we don't have to have all the answers. We just have to have the confidence to start discussions. And there's a great diagram in Caroline's book, Holding the Hope. The journey might start with feelings of disbelief and hopelessness, but through education, we can get through, any depression, and we can, build up self-confidence again, so that students gain and teachers gain empowerment and meaning to learning. The Climate Psychology Alliance, which is linked in the chat, has some great advice about talking to young people about climate change. And I'm not putting, Les, how do I talk to people about what a 4-degree warmer world will look like? It's almost impossible. And part of the reason it's almost impossible is because those in power and politics are not grasping the nettle and saying, this is what it's going to be like, therefore we are going to do everything. And that's why this feeling of sadness and being let down enters children's lives. But at least by being an honest teacher, I wear my green heart on my sleeve and speak to children honestly as I can, without causing climate doom, because we talk about it, we discuss feelings. Oops, there's the dog. And so I'm just going to move on. Anyway, it's about talking about it, and I'm just going to hand over to Paul.
So where then to receive support? And I think we've referenced this quite a bit. There's, you've heard from so many different people, and we're going to mention even more. So the Ministry of Eco Education is all about amplifying the wealth of support already out there. We definitely don't want to reinvent the wheel at all. And most of what we've done actually is weave together stuff that other people have and just put it into a framework that's maybe easier for teachers to be able to access and get the best of everything. Now, we do have a small team, but they are incredibly enthusiastic. And Tom is on the call, and we've got Meryl and myself, and we've also got Hannah and Nirvana. And we're spread out across the UK, providing regional support, especially with these bridging documents and the local authority kind of connections that we've got. We do lots of in-person as well, but maybe one thing we should mention is this online is kind of one flavour of what we do, but we're more than happy to kind of come and reach out and connect with teachers and schools kind of on a more in-person basis.
Excellent. Sorry about that. I don't know if you could hear it. My dog was off and away again. Elsewhere, beyond our little team, there's a government-funded support focused on schools completing climate action plans, which guide schools to achieve net zero or decarbonise. Government-funded projects are broken down into climate ambassador hubs, initiative led by the University of Reading, UKRI and STEM Learning to mobilise experts with the climate sector and engage young people and educators. It's a great opportunity to get young people working in the climate, to get people working in the climate and sustainability sector into schools and encourage young people to think about sustainability as in careers. You can request a climate ambassador through the STEM ambassador website, and I have just registered as a climate ambassador in the Northeast. So if you're in the Northeast, you might even get me. There's also the National Education Nature Park, which aims to embed nature-based learning into the curriculum. It's got some fantastic resources and ideas on. They're working with the RHS and the NHM, and they encourage children and young people all over the country to take action to improve their site for people and wildlife. There's some really well-resourced materials, and what they're trying to do is create a National Education Nature Park, which is going to be the size of the conurbation of Birmingham or bigger. That's how much land schools have, and we just need to start thinking about how to rewild it. Actually, a fantastic book here. I didn't even put this in the chat. Rewilding Manual for Schools. Sits on my desk. And there's also the Sustainability Support Hub, a growing database. It's not huge yet, an online database of quality assured resources. So the DFE is taking action. What they haven't done yet is do that major curriculum change that we're really optimistic for with the review.
Yeah, and those government-funded projects have got millions of pounds behind them. They're massive organisations with massive staff. And of course, we want them to succeed, and they're part of this jigsaw. But what we're really keen to kind of convey is that there is a wealth of a whole variety of different people and organisations with different structures and all sorts. Another one then is Let's Go Zero, and they have this national initiative supported by the charity Ashdem, which links climate action advisors to schools and unites schools, teachers, pupils and parents to reduce their carbon footprint and ultimately influence government policy to help achieve net zero. So the built environment is quite a fundamental part of that. And you can find out more with that link there. And I would definitely suggest that you connect with your local climate action advisor. I think there's going to be a network of maybe about 30 of them across the country. Another great one that we really love is Teach the Future. It's a youth-led campaign pushing for broad curriculum education in the UK. And one of their initiatives is the Teach the Teacher workshops, where students are trained with the skills and knowledge to give their teachers a 1-hour lesson on climate change, teaching them about what it's like being a young person in the climate crisis and the need for climate education for all. And we've had great experience over the last year helping connect schools, and I know Tom actually has been involved in some of the delivery with that in particularly schools in Bristol, and we're really keen to help connect teachers with that and help them to facilitate it within their schools. And I think we're going to throw in a link in the chat there so that you can access the Teach the Future. Excellent. So next, we're going to hear from one more person, from Lee Jowett from Sheffield Hallam University, and he's got some more advice on where we might be able to find support. I'm just going to dig out Lee's video. Here we are.
For me, it can feel quite lonely when you are that one voice in a school or one organisation. But I think certainly from the networks that I've worked with, which quite often now are virtual networks, there's lots of like-minded people out there, and there's that whole sort of mind hive around sharing ideas. So you might come up against one problem in your school or your setting, and think, right, how do I get over this barrier? But actually, kind of there's online forums, there's other groups, there's obviously other people within your school or your education setting who probably have come across this problem before, they've worked out a solution. So I think for me, it's about finding your allies and working together to take some of this action, because a bit like young people, us as adults probably feel quite anxious sometimes, or we feel like, oh, that's another thing I need to try and deal with. But actually working together and working on shared goals and values, I think for me is the really thing is, find your allies, find the people that can work with you, and you will make that difference and that action that you're trying to achieve. If you then talk to the local authority, quite often they will have officers that have targets where they need to work on some of these things. So for me, working with your local authority officers, whether they're kind of the nature team or the biodiversity team, or it could be your active travel team, I think they're really helpful because they've got the knowledge, they've got some of the ideas. I think the other one as well is if you're in a multi-academy trust, quite often I'm now starting to see where we've got the Department for Education strategy and it's talking about climate leaders and action plans. Actually, some of that is now coming from trust central teams rather than from individual schools. And I think for me, that really strengthens some of that work because, again, you're not working individually. You've got a group of a team that's working together. So, for example, I'm a chair of a multi-academy trust in Leicester, and we've got a sustainability strategy, and we have eco leaders in each school, but they regularly meet. And we also have our business leaders that meet together to share ideas, tackle some of those problems. So that's the other thing as well. Talk to governors, talk to your trustees, because they are accountable for the school or for the trust, and they will make some of those changes when you suggest them, really.
So thanks, Lee. It was a huge step for me in my teaching over the last few years. I was trying to identify someone to help me. I felt very alone at the chalk face. And so I actually got in touch with the climate action team in my local authority of Northumberland. And we worked together to reach more schools and build communities of like-minded teachers. They've gone ahead and done net zero action days for students, and actually taken what young people are saying and put it into their climate action plan. So that's, it's just that needs those first little points of contact. And in a busy teacher's life, it's almost impossible to do that. But once you do it, it can bring you and your students, huge benefits, and therefore the local community. Ministry of Eco Education has set up a WhatsApp community group to share ideas, share best practice, look for support, look for people in your area. So I think the link is in the chat there now. But as Lee said, there's the DfE Climate and Sustainability Strategy. It is only a strategy. Their aim is that all schools will do a climate action plan by 2025, which is this academic year. It is only a strategy though, so we still need those enthusiastic teachers trying not to burn themselves out. But there's a rich tapestry. One thing to reassure you is there is a rich tapestry of people and organisations who are supporting schools. Before you start doing anything on sustainability, it can feel overwhelming. But where can we start? So what we don't want to do is overwhelm anyone, Paul. We want to make sure that they can feel like they can take small steps or push forward. So off you go.
Definitely. So yeah, this is the last section. Thank you so much for all your attention and kind of engagement over the last 45 minutes. Now, incorporating education for sustainability could be as small as linking in a couple of new activities with a focus on the environment. Or maybe, just as Sarah said, it could be changing a key text so that you bring in themes of something like migration or climate change. It could be drawing on one of the Ministry of Eco Education big questions and pulling in a whole series of different resources from those different organisations. You could focus on a question like, where should we get our food? It could be Meryl's question. It was about tea, wasn't it? Meryl, what was your favourite one?
What does it take to make a cup of tea?
To make a cup of tea. And there are, as Meryl said, there's about 70 of those questions, and they're inspiration for anyone at any key stage in any subject. There's something in that for everyone. It could be, though, that you change within one subject. Could be a certain subject within the school takes the lead. It might be you are here as a geography teacher or a science teacher or an English teacher or responsible for art, and you can take the lead and almost show within your own setting what's possible. You can be that kind of beacon and others will follow. It could be that you're responsible for an entire year group and you could change the kind of context or a question within for a certain year group. We've got a really good example of Dom Simpson, head teacher at primary school as part of the Windsor Academy Trust. And he kind of enjoyed what we'd created so much last year. He then helped weave it across all primary schools across the whole trust kind of in the Midlands.
Yeah, I think, we have to recognise we all start small. I had a bit of an awakening back in 2015 after reading the Paris Agreement, and it was like, oh my goodness, it's a mess. We don't really know what all the solutions are, but how can I educate my kids as best as possible? And that's when I started using the Sustainable Development Goals in my subject. The head teacher checked with me that I was still covering the national curriculum, which I was, and then rolled it out across the whole school. So, those, teachers do have a lot more autonomy than they necessarily believe themselves, if they're working in a department. You can actually do things in your classroom that can be the change. So what we want to know is if this has inspired you, if you're already thinking about taking any actions this term, if you've got any ideas about what you might try over the next term or the next year, can you add them in the chat and we can have a little look? I'll just, you can add those in. I'll just carry on talking a little bit because we think that mapping the curriculum in your school is and where sustainability already sits is a really good start. It's part of our 5-step journey that we recommend for schools and have added a little simple template into the chat, I think. Is it there, Paul? Is it there, Tom, yet? And you can use it as a stepping stone to make or include more cohesive education for sustainability across your curriculum. And you can then check the full journey that we set out on our website if you're looking for inspiration. So if you've got any ideas about what you might try, because it always has to start somewhere or build on where you are, what are you thinking of doing this year?
I think, Meryl, that mapping across subject areas, across year groups is a really useful first step. I've definitely done that in a couple of schools I've been in. And what it does is it highlights what is already being done. That, you'd be surprised that actually, just because someone hasn't really mentioned it or made it explicit, it's there.
They might be in the staff room and being quiet because they don't think they want to make a big fuss about it, but actually they're doing something great.
Yeah. And what we're suggesting then as well is that you might be able to create a bit more of a cohesive plan. So kind of helping to realize that across those 7 key themes of energy, transport, food, nature, water, all of those ones, that maybe there's one that's missing or that you haven't got so much in, or actually within a certain year group, they don't talk about this, or you focus too heavily on one thing and not the other. So there's a really good way to be able to explore and map that.
And then once you've identified what's in the curriculum, you can link out to wider learning opportunities. Get a STEM ambassador in, get a climate ambassador in, get someone from local industry in to talk about green careers. So you engage all young people and staff to green the school and the wider community. I think that's what I've found in education. I've 15 years. It's hardly anything really, blink of an eye. But I found that, by doing sustainability initiatives and actions and greening my school, it sent out huge ripples into the community, and it's joyful. And I think that's my I think, as Les said, this potentially is scary times. If we are talking about a 4-degree warmer world, I can't even really imagine what that's going to be like. How can I teach my children? And as a UN accredited climate change teacher, I feel like I've got knowledge that, I need to impart. But what we can do is make our own local area better. And we can then put pressure on. One of the things that Caroline Hickman does in her wider interview is talk about what children want to learn. And one of the things they really want to learn is how to lobby Parliament, how to lobby government, because actually that's how they see they need change. So, there's a whole range of things from, doing something really simple in your local environment, like a litter pick, to lobbying government. Obviously, there's some now restrictions about going on students going on protest. Can't imagine why.
There's some good things in here, Meryl, around skills and careers. Jane's suggesting that it is a bit more complicated in her setting, but because there's so much content to cover in individual subjects. But I guess, what we're suggesting is you can swap out the context. So, it's not about adding this in as an extra, but it's changing the context of the learning so that the environment is the theme, or we kind of appreciate there's things to juggle. The other key thing
that Lisa wants to know if we can do anything to home educated children. We can open up the Ministry of Eco Education website to home educators. So just fill in the little form online on the site. Is that the easiest way, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. Anne is from the Edmund Rice Schools Network, and we joined forces, I guess, and you really led some inspiring CPD where you had your head teachers stood up in front of all of the staff community, and they read out a pledge. But you're suggesting that you're going to make sure that it's renewed, re-energized, and you've got an international COP. And actually, that's another thing that I've experienced.
Doing a mock COP was one of the best things I did. I loved it. We did it for which year was COP26 during COVID lockdown. It was amazing. I definitely recommend doing one. Interclimate Network's got some good resources on theirs. And a Green Careers Week in Key Stage 2, how fantastic. And embedding green skills in Key Stage 3 science lessons. Well done, Chris. I think that's the answer, isn't it? It's about sharing, best practice, getting ideas, sharing links. So in terms of Paul, what can we do to share? Denz wants to know if we can share all these links that we're putting in the chat.
We can definitely, and on our social media across all the different platforms, we definitely share these regularly. We've got lots of lists of these. I mean, the thing is, this is so multi-layered and so overwhelming that there's more links than we could ever share. So what we tried to do through our website and through all the materials that we've curated is to piece these together into something that's more logical. I guess our ultimate aim is to provide something to teachers that's been kind of put through a lens, has been put through a sieve, and has some sort of structure to it. So hopefully if you go access the website and all of our social media and YouTube, that you'll find all of this kind of content, and that will help you. I think this might be a good moment to say thank you so much for taking part in this CPD. We really, really hope this has inspired and motivated you to take action. Then we've heard from a really wide range of experts, and all of those, just to remind you, have longer interviews that you can dive into on our YouTube channel. And I think we're going to throw that YouTube link in. Also, please make sure you log in and explore the support from the Ministry of Eco-Education. Every school in the country has got access to the Ministry of Eco-Education website. And the only reason we want you to log in is so that we can kind of see who's accessing it and kind of understand a bit about kind of the impact across the country. We have some exciting new things happening this year. I'm going to take a moment just to mention some of them. There's going to be more online events and in-person events and all kinds of stuff going on. We've got some very targeted Key Stage 3 learning journeys, and we've had Tamwin and Meryl and a whole group of people helping over the last 6 months, year, really helping to develop those. So we've got lots more material coming to help secondary schools. And actually what's really interesting with those is we've got still a kind of cross-curricular approach. We've got 2 subjects that are helping to answer a shared inquiry question. We've got a dynamic network of activators, and this is that all the people we've met over the last 3 years have a particular kind of interest, enthusiasm, direction. They're really kind of activator people, and what we want to do is help connect those with schools. So this network of activators, we're going to be shouting about and sharing in the coming year. We also are going to be launching our very own campaign, and that's going to be focused around plant-based food, and we're going to help bring together a whole variety of partners, just as how we've been working kind of in the past. We're going to bring together lots of different organizations who work in the plant-based food space and really help energize and kind of move on from meat-free Mondays. We reckon meat-free Mondays is a bit old and needs a bit of a rejuvenation, and maybe there's something more around plant-based food that we can do. So please keep in touch. We want to hear how you're getting on, and we really, really want to share best practice. And again, on YouTube, we've got loads of videos from teachers and schools, and we really want to help platform and share that. This is the year Education for Sustainability goes mainstream. It's happening this year, and we're going to make it happen. And all of you on this call are part of that journey. So thank you so much. We're going to stick around, and if anyone has any other questions they want to raise,
we do know it's inset day for some of you, so you might need to go and look busy. But otherwise, if you can stay around, we'll be answering more chat. We can have a bit of a chat and answering questions. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. So what we've got, I love that.